Wesley Grant's fingers gripped the steering wheel, the road stretching before him like a long, endless ribbon. He wasn't prepared for what he would find when he returned home. His mind had already imagined the usual greeting, the housekeepers, the staff, the formalities. The girls would rush to him, their tiny feet pounding the floor as they shouted his name in joy. But something felt off. As the gates to his sprawling estate creaked open, Wesley Grant slowed the car. He had always kept the staff in check, always maintained the status quo, always made sure everything was in order. Yet today, the silence of the estate felt too loud, too still. He pulled up the long driveway, his heart pounding, his mind racing. The house looked pristine as ever, the perfectly manicured lawns glistening in the afternoon sun. But something else caught his eye. In the center of the estate's grand courtyard, a sight that shook him to his core. His 3-year-old triplets, Elod, Isa, and Grace, were laughing hysterically. But it wasn't their usual playfulness. No, this was different. They were dressed in tattered, soiled dresses, covered head to toe in dirt. Mud streaked their cheeks, their blonde curls matted with grime. They were inside a plastic basin, water from the garden hose splashing everywhere as they clapped their hands in glee. The air was thick with the scent of wet soil and waterlogged grass. And standing beside them, holding the hose, was Maya Williams, their housekeeper. Her beige uniform was soaked through, water streaming from the nozzle as she kept the triplets drenched. Maya, who was supposed to be cleaning, was laughing with the children, her face lit up in a way he had never seen before. Wesley's throat tightened as he stepped out of the car. His shoes hit the gravel with a sharp crunch. He hadn't even taken off his blazer, still caught in the rush of jet lag and confusion. His voice exploded into the silence of the courtyard, raw and jagged. "What the hell is this, Maya?" he demanded, his anger seeping through the air like acid. Maya looked up, startled, her eyes wide with surprise. The hose slipped from her hand, water splashing onto the stone ground. The triplets, their giggles now silenced, looked up at their father with wide eyes. Grace clung to Isa's arm, her small face terrified. Wesley's eyes flared with rage. His chest tightened. He had come home to find his daughters, his precious girls, playing in filth. Was this what they had been reduced to in his absence? Maya, her voice barely a whisper, stood frozen. "Mr. Grant, Don't Mr. Grant me," Wesley barked, stepping forward, his fists clenched. "What the hell is going on here? You think this is funny?" Maya took a step back, the weight of his words hitting her. She had seen his temper before, but never like this, never aimed at her. She opened her mouth to speak, but hesitated, unsure of what to say. She had not meant for this to happen. She was just trying to make them smile. His eyes shifted from her to the girls, their muddy hands, their innocent faces. "Inside!" he snapped, his voice now cold. "All of you. Now!" The triplets, trembling, scrambled to get out of the basin, their little feet slipping on the wet ground. "You," Wesley said, turning back to Maya, his voice a low growl. "You want to play in mud with my daughters, like they're some circus act? Let me show you what happens when you cross the line." Without waiting for her to respond, he grabbed her wrist, his fingers tight, dragging her toward the far side of the estate, toward the old reptile enclosures. His mind was clouded with rage. His daughters, what had she done to them? Maya struggled against his grip, her heart pounding. This wasn't what she had intended. She had only wanted to give the girls a moment of joy. But now she was being dragged away as if she were some kind of criminal. The gravel crunched beneath their feet as Wesley dragged Maya through the manicured garden, her soaked uniform clinging to her like a second skin. His grip on her wrist was unforgiving, his steps harsh and fast. Maya stumbled slightly, trying to keep up, her mind racing, her chest tight with fear. She had never seen him like this. The Wesley Grant she knew was composed, controlled. But now something in him had cracked wide open. They reached the back gate, the one that led to the far side of the estate, where the old reptile enclosures were kept. Remnants of Monique's dream of educating children about wildlife. The glass serpentarium stood before them, tall and imposing, its sides thick with glass. The temperature inside kept humid for the various reptiles that lived there. It had once been a place of quiet education, a sanctuary for snakes, lizards, and other creatures that Monique had loved. Now it felt like a prison. "Please," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't do this, Wesley. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." He didn't respond. With one swift motion, he shoved open the door to the serpentarium. The air inside was thick and warm, the faint smell of moss and heat lamps filling her nostrils. The faint hissing of snakes from within their terrariums echoed in the space. The room was dark, but the glow of the heat lamps illuminated the rows of glass enclosures, each one home to a different species, calm and indifferent to the chaos unfolding just outside. Wesley yanked Maya forward, forcing her into the room. Her heart pounded as her eyes darted across the room, landing on the large enclosure in the far corner, the one where the albino python usually rested. The memory of her childhood came flooding back, of the copperhead that had nearly taken her life, the snake that had bitten her leg when she'd tried to save her sister. Maya's breath caught in her throat as her knees buckled. She gasped for air, her vision swimming as panic surged through her. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible, sob catching in her chest. She collapsed onto the floor, her hands pressed against the cool stone, trembling. "I wasn't trying to hurt them. I swear to God, I wasn't." Wesley's expression was unreadable, his anger still boiling just beneath the surface. He looked down at her, but his eyes were not filled with sympathy, only frustration. His hand tightened on her wrist, pulling her up, dragging her towards the back enclosure. Maya's heart raced as she struggled against him. "Please, I can't go in there." Her words were barely a whisper, her eyes wide with fear. Her body trembled as memories of her childhood, of the snake bite, flooded back. "You should have thought about that before you turned my daughters into mud-covered animals." Wesley's voice was low, cutting. "You think this is funny? You think playing in filth is some kind of game?" "No," Maya whispered, her voice barely a breath. "I didn't mean for it to be this way. I was just trying to make them laugh. They were happy, Wesley." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please, I can't go in there. I was bitten once when I was a kid. I can't." Wesley paused, his hand loosening on her wrist. For a brief moment, he seemed to reconsider. His face softened just a little, but the anger in his eyes remained. He didn't let go of her completely, but he didn't drag her forward either. Maya sank to her knees, her breath ragged. She couldn't stop shaking. The memories of that day in Georgia, when the copperhead had slithered between her and her sister, when she had lunged to push Monique out of the way, came rushing back in a wave of suffocating fear. The pain, the terror, the hospital ceiling. She felt small again, like a scared little girl. "I can't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Wesley stood still, staring at her. His mind was a battlefield, rage fighting against a growing sense of confusion. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected her to break. But there it was. She wasn't defiant, wasn't challenging him. She was broken, scared, vulnerable. Maya's body was trembling, her hands pressed to the floor, her face flushed with fear and exhaustion. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing, but it was impossible. The memories were suffocating her, choking her with their weight. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Finally, Wesley stepped back. His voice was tight, cold. "You'll be out of this house by sundown," he said. "You don't touch my daughters again?" Wesley left Maya on the floor of the serpentarium. Her body still curled in a tight, trembling ball, her sobs echoing off the glass enclosures. The faint hiss of the snakes seemed louder now, the air heavy with tension, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Maya's tears soaked the floor beneath her, the weight of everything she had lost, and everything she was about to lose, crushing her chest. She wasn't sure how long she sat there, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. All she knew was that the world outside the serpentarium had gone quiet. Wesley's footsteps had faded, and the house felt as cold and distant as the vast expanse of the garden that stretched beyond the estate. She had failed him. She had failed the girls. But most of all, she had failed Monique. She thought back to the promise she had made to her sister, the promise to take care of them, to love them as her own. And now, here she was, drenched in mud, abandoned in the same house she had once thought of as home. The door to the serpentarium opened again, and she didn't even look up, too consumed by the weight of her regret. But it wasn't Wesley who entered. It was Greta, the housekeeper, a woman who had been in the Grant household for years and who had seen far more than most. Her soft voice broke the silence. "Maya," Greta called gently. "He's gone, but I need you to come inside." Maya nodded, pushing herself off the floor, her legs weak beneath her. Greta's arms helped steady her, guiding her toward the door. The house seemed impossibly distant now, her body a stranger to its familiar hallways. As they reached the main house, Maya's heart sank. The sight of the girls, their faces still swollen from crying, was unbearable. They had been waiting for her, hoping for her return, for her comfort. But now they were confused, their small eyes searching for answers in the silence that hung between them. "Where's Mama Maya?" Grace asked in a small voice, her eyes filled with uncertainty. Maya's throat tightened, but she forced a smile. "I'm here, sunshine," she whispered, kneeling down to pull Grace into her arms. The other two triplets, Elod and Issa, followed, clinging to her as though they feared she might vanish if they let go. "Why did Daddy yell?" Issa asked, her voice small and trembling. Maya's heart broke for them. These innocent girls, who had once known nothing but love and laughter, now carried the weight of a broken household on their tiny shoulders. "I'm so sorry," Maya whispered, her words soft but full of sincerity. "I never wanted any of this." But the words didn't feel like enough. She didn't know how to fix it, didn't know how to make them forget the fear in their father's eyes, didn't know how to make them believe that everything was going to be okay again. As she sat with the girls, holding them close, her thoughts drifted back to Wesley. What had happened to him? Where had the man she had known gone? The man who had once been kind to her, who had trusted her with the care of his daughters. Now he seemed like a stranger, cold, distant, and full of rage. Maya's thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps. Greta stood at the door, holding something in her hand, an envelope. "This came for you," she said quietly, her eyes soft with sympathy. Maya took the envelope, her fingers trembling as she recognized the handwriting on the front. It was unmistakable, the familiar loops and curves of Monique's script. Her heart skipped a beat. She opened it slowly, her breath catching in her throat. Inside was a single letter, the words written in Monique's unmistakable hand. "If I don't make it, promise me you'll let Maya stay. She's blood, she's family, and she's the only one who will love them like I do." The room seemed to spin as Maya read the words over and over again. Her breath hitched. Monique had known. She had known that Maya would be the one to step in, the one to carry the weight of her family, her legacy. Maya's hands shook as she folded the letter and pressed it against her chest. Tears filled her eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to break down. The weight of Monique's love, her strength, her unwavering belief in Maya, crushed her. It was a love that had transcended even death. Outside, the garden was quiet, the sun dipping low in the sky. The shadows of the trees stretched long across the estate, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to change. The house was unusually quiet that evening. The sounds of the girls' laughter were gone, replaced by the distant hum of the air conditioning and the occasional rustling of the leaves outside. Wesley had retreated to his office, his body tense with unspoken thoughts. Maya sat in the kitchen, staring down at the crumpled letter in her hands, the words from Monique still echoing in her mind. She's blood. She's family. Those words felt like a weight, a burden, and a blessing all at once. Maya had always known she was connected to the Grant family in some way, through Monique, through the promise she had made. But now, the gravity of what Monique had asked of her was overwhelming. To be the one to take her place? To love these girls as her own? She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Greta standing in the doorway, her face a mixture of sympathy and concern. "Maya," she said softly, "he's still angry, but I think he'll come around. It's just going to take time." Maya nodded, her chest tightening. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I was just trying to make them happy." Greta stepped into the room, her hands folded in front of her. "You're not the one who hurt anyone. Wesley's been carrying his grief for so long, but it's not about you. It's about him, about what he's lost, and what he's afraid of losing again." Maya felt the tears well up in her eyes again. "But how can I fix this, Greta? How can I make it right?" The older woman walked over to the table, placing her hand gently on Maya's shoulder. "You can't fix it for him, but you can be here, for the girls, for Wesley. That's what Monique wanted. She trusted you with her heart, and now it's time for you to give that heart to them." Maya's breath hitched, and she felt a lump form in her throat. "I don't know if I can do it. I'm not her. I'm not the perfect mother Monique was. I don't even know if I belong here." Greta looked at her with kindness in her eyes. "You belong here, Maya. In your own way, you always have." But as she spoke, the front door opened and a shadow crossed the threshold. Wesley stood there, his figure rigid in the dim hallway light. He had removed his tie, his shoulders heavy, but his eyes still held a distance that made Maya's chest tighten. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, watching her. She felt the weight of his gaze on her, the silence between them thick with unspoken words. Finally, he spoke, his voice strained but calm. "Maya," he said, his tone softer than she had heard it earlier, but still guarded. "Can we talk?" Maya stood slowly, feeling the tension between them stretch, as if the very air was holding its breath. She nodded, stepping toward him. The letter from Monique, still clutched in her hand, felt like a fragile thing she couldn't bear to drop. He led her outside, into the garden where the evening light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the grass. The air was thick with the scent of roses and damp earth. The peace of the estate, however, was a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside Wesley's mind. They stood in silence for a few moments, the sounds of crickets and distant birds filling the space between them. "Look, Maya," Wesley finally said, his voice quieter, almost apologetic. I don't know how to do this, how to make sense of it all. I've been angry. I've been confused. And I took that out on you, but—" His voice faltered, and for the first time, Maya saw the cracks in his armor. The man who had always been composed, always in control, now seemed vulnerable, broken by grief and guilt. "But what?" Maya whispered, her voice a gentle invitation for him to open up, to trust her the way Monique had. Wesley turned to face her, his eyes haunted. "But I need you here. I need you for the girls. I don't know how to keep raising them alone. Without her. Without Monique. She trusted you, Maya. She said you'd love them like she did." Maya's heart skipped a beat. The words, the weight of them, crushed her chest. Monique had trusted her. She had placed her girls in her hands, not as a responsibility, but as an act of love. She didn't know how to respond, didn't know if she could promise what he needed. All she could do was stand there, facing him, and let the weight of his grief wash over her. She wanted to fix it, to take away the pain, but there were no easy answers. "I'll stay," she finally said, her voice steady but soft. "I'll stay for the girls. I'll stay for Monique." Wesley's expression softened, just for a moment. He nodded, but the relief in his eyes was brief, fleeting. "I don't know how to make it right," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "You don't have to," Maya replied. "We'll figure it out, together." For the first time in days, the air felt a little less heavy, though the weight of what lay ahead still loomed large. The days that followed were marked by a fragile silence. The house was full of people, yet it felt emptier than ever. Wesley and Maya moved through the estate like two strangers occupying the same space, each caught in their own grief and confusion. The girls, though still too young to fully grasp the weight of what had happened, felt the tension between them. Their laughter had faded. The warmth in the house had dimmed. Wesley spent most of his time in his office, his mind constantly preoccupied with the past, with the loss of his wife, and now the betrayal he felt from his own emotions. How had he gone from seeing Maya as family, someone who had always been a part of their world, to someone he had shoved aside in anger? How had the distance between them grown so wide? Maya, too, couldn't shake the weight of everything. Her promise to Monique had kept her rooted in the family, but the complexities of the situation made her question her place. She loved the girls, truly. They were like her own daughters, but the shadows of the past were long and unforgiving. She had stepped into a role she wasn't sure she was capable of fulfilling. It wasn't until the night of the dinner party that things finally broke. The estate was alive with energy that night, guests arriving in black tie attire, glasses clinking, and the air buzzing with conversation. It was a gathering that Wesley had organized, despite the tension in the house. Business meetings, social obligations, and the pressures of maintaining appearances had forced him to continue his public life as though everything was fine. Maya had agreed to attend, but she could feel the weight of every gaze that fell on her, the way people looked at her, like she didn't belong. She could sense the judgment, the whispers behind her back. She wasn't part of their world. She never had been. As she moved through the crowd, her eyes flickered to the triplets, who were seated at the children's table, their small faces illuminated by the soft glow of the chandeliers. They seemed out of place too, despite the smiles they wore. Their innocence shone through, but it was clear they were confused. They missed their mother. When the dinner finally began, Maya sat at the table, the conversation flowing around her like a distant murmur. Wesley sat across from her, his jaw set in a hard line. The tension between them was palpable, thick enough to cut through the air. Neither of them knew how to fix the broken pieces of their relationship. The meal passed in uncomfortable silence, the clinking of silverware the only sound as the guests ate their meals. It wasn't until dessert was served that the cracks finally began to show. Wesley, who had been distant all evening, suddenly broke the silence. His voice was cold, but there was a tremor in it, as if he was forcing himself to hold back something more volatile. "I'm tired of pretending," he said, his eyes locking on Maya. The room grew quiet, the guests watching as the two of them faced off. Maya's heart raced. She hadn't expected this. "Pretending?" she asked softly, though her voice betrayed the nervousness she felt. "Yes, pretending that everything is fine," Wesley spat, his words sharp. "Pretending that I can keep living in this house, this lie. You've become everything Monique wanted me to stay away from. I don't know who you are anymore. You weren't supposed to be here. You weren't supposed to take her place." The words hit Maya like a slap in the face. She tried to respond, but the words caught in her throat. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal in his eyes. It was too much. She could feel the tears threatening to spill, but she refused to let them show. "I never wanted to take her place," Maya whispered, her voice steady, though her hands were trembling. "I wanted to be here for the girls, for you. But you've shut me out, Wesley. You've pushed me away like I'm nothing more than a stranger in this house." A tense silence filled the room. It felt like the weight of everything. Monique's death, the years of unresolved grief, the complicated emotions Maya had been carrying, was finally coming to a head. The truth was out there now, raw and unfiltered. There was no hiding it anymore. Wesley's face softened, the anger giving way to something deeper, something more vulnerable. He rubbed his hands over his face, as if the weight of his emotions had become too much to bear. "I'm scared, Maya. Scared that if I let go of my anger, if I let go of my control, I'll lose everything. My daughters, my family. I can't do it. I can't lose them." Maya reached across the table, her hand brushing against his. The touch was tentative, unsure, but it was enough. Enough to bridge the gap between them, even if just for a moment. "You won't lose them," Maya said softly. But you have to stop pushing me away. You have to let me in." Wesley didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. The walls he had built around himself, the ones he had clung to so desperately, began to crumble. Maybe I've been wrong," he said quietly, his voice barely audible. "Maybe I've been so caught up in what I lost, I couldn't see what I still have." Maya squeezed his hand gently. "We've both lost so much, but we still have each other, and we have the girls." For the first time that night, the tension in the room seemed to dissipate. Wesley didn't pull away, and Maya didn't feel like an intruder in his life. The foundation they had built together, however fragile, seemed to solidify. The next few days passed in a quiet tension. Though the raw confrontation had been cathartic, it hadn't solved everything. Wesley and Maya were still walking on eggshells around each other, their conversations short, the distance between them palpable. But something had shifted, a subtle change in the air. Neither of them knew exactly what would happen next, but they both felt it. A shift toward something, though neither could name it. The girls, still unsure of what had transpired, continued their usual routines. They still laughed, still played, but there was an underlying uncertainty in their eyes. The house was no longer a safe space of joy. It was a place where old wounds reopened and new fears took root. One evening, Maya found herself sitting in the nursery with the triplets. They were sprawled on the floor, crayons scattered across the rug, drawing pictures. Grace held up a crayon drawing of their family: a smiling father, a smiling Maya, and the 3 little girls, their faces wide with happiness. It was a picture of innocence, of the life they all wanted to believe in. "Mama Maya," Grace asked, looking up with those wide, innocent eyes, "are we all gonna be okay?" The question, simple yet profound, hung in the air like a weight Maya couldn't escape. She didn't know how to answer. How could she promise them that everything would be fine when she herself wasn't sure? Before she could respond, the door opened, and Wesley stepped inside. His gaze immediately landed on the girls, their innocent faces lit with the glow of childhood, unaffected by the storm brewing in the adult world around them. "Maya," Wesley began, his voice softer than it had been in days, "can we talk?" Maya stood up, brushing off her skirt, and followed him out of the nursery. They walked into the hallway, where the house was eerily quiet. The other staff members had retreated for the night, leaving the large house to feel like an empty shell. Wesley led her toward the study, the room where so many of their conversations had started and ended. He closed the door behind them, and for a moment, they just stood there, facing each other. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, but this time there was something different about the silence. "I've been thinking," Wesley said, his voice steady but unsure. "I've been thinking about Monique, about everything, and about how I've been handling things. I've been so focused on keeping control, on keeping things together, that I haven't been paying attention to what really matters." Maya's heart skipped a beat. Was this an apology? Or was he just venting again? He continued, his hands gripping the back of a chair as he spoke. "I've seen you with the girls. You're not just their caregiver. You're part of their family, whether I wanted to admit it or not. And I'm sorry for pushing you away, for making you feel like you don't belong here. Because you do. You always have." Maya didn't know what to say. The weight of his words, the sincerity in his voice, left her breathless. She had expected so much less from him. She had prepared herself for more walls, more excuses, more distance. But this was different. "Thank you," she finally managed to say, her voice breaking. "Thank you for saying that." Wesley looked at her, a mixture of regret and relief in his eyes. "I don't know how we're going to fix all this," he admitted. "But I want to try. I want to try for them." He motioned to the nursery. "And for you." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had spent so much time building walls of her own, believing that she couldn't be a part of this family, that she couldn't offer what they needed. But Wesley's admission, his willingness to see her, to recognize her role, shattered that belief. "Are you sure?" Maya whispered. "Are you really sure? Because I've been holding on to this idea of being here for so long, but I don't want to be just a shadow in this house. I don't want to feel like I'm waiting for permission to be part of their lives." Wesley stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're not a shadow. You're their mother figure. You're our mother figure. Your family. I don't care about what the world thinks anymore. I care about what's in this house, about what's real." The weight that had been pressing down on Maya's chest for so long lifted. She felt her walls crumbling, piece by piece, until all that was left was the truth. The truth that she had always loved these girls, that she had always been a part of their family, even if she hadn't known it yet. Wesley reached out, his hand gently taking hers. "I want to make this right, Maya. I can't undo the past, but I can start with today, and I want you to stay. For them. For me." Maya squeezed his hand, her voice soft but firm. "I'll stay. I'll stay for them. I'll stay for you. But we have to do this together. No more walls, Wesley. No more pretending." He nodded, a small, relieved smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "No more pretending," he agreed. In that moment, with the house still and quiet around them, Maya felt something shift in her soul. It wasn't just forgiveness. It was hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild. Not just the house, but the family too. The following days were filled with small but meaningful steps toward rebuilding. The air in the estate had lightened, but the work ahead still loomed over them. The triplets, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, returned to their playful selves, their laughter ringing through the hallways again. Yet, there was still a quiet understanding between Maya and Wesley, a tacit agreement to heal, to move forward, and to be present for each other in ways they hadn't been before. Wesley found himself spending more time at the house. Work had always been his escape, his fortress of control. But now he felt the pull of family in a way he hadn't in years. He wasn't just there for the business. He was there for the girls, for Maya. On a bright Saturday morning, Wesley called a family meeting in the garden. The sun was high, casting its golden warmth over the yard, where the girls were running around, chasing each other with wild abandon. Wesley leaned against the stone railing, his arms crossed, watching them. Maya joined him, a soft smile on her face as she took in the sight of the children. They were a picture of innocence, a picture of hope. "This place is different now, Maya," Wesley said, his voice low but steady. "I can feel it. The girls, they feel it too. We all do." Maya nodded, her eyes fixed on the girls, their laughter filling the air. "It's not just the house that's changed. It's us. We're starting to heal, Wesley." He looked at her, the weight of their past still hanging in the air, but there was no anger, no bitterness. There was only a fragile hope, the kind that grows slowly, but once rooted, is difficult to tear away. "I think we're finally doing this right," he said, a hint of emotion breaking through. "Right," Maya echoed. "We're doing it right." Just then, Grace, the youngest of the triplets, ran up to them, breathless with excitement. "Mama Maya!" she cried, her little arms flailing as she approached. "Can you come play with us? Please!" Maya crouched down to meet Grace's eager eyes, her heart swelling with affection. "Of course, sweetie," she replied, her voice full of warmth. She reached out, taking Grace's small hand, and together they joined the others, running across the yard, the sound of their feet hitting the grass, mixing with the soft breeze that rustled the trees. Wesley watched them for a moment, his heart heavy but full of something that had been missing for a long time: peace. He saw the way the girls gravitated toward Maya, how natural it seemed for them to be with her. The walls he had spent so long building up around his heart, around his family, had cracked. And he knew, deep down, that Maya had always belonged here. Not as a caretaker, not as a staff member, but as a mother, their mother. He made his way over to the girls, taking a seat on the grass beside them. As they played, he couldn't help but smile. There was something about this moment, this simple, fleeting moment, that felt more real than any business deal or high-powered meeting ever had. Later that evening, after the girls had been put to bed, Wesley and Maya found themselves sitting on the porch swing, the cool night air settling around them. The house was quiet, save for the distant chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of the wind through the trees. For the first time in months, the silence wasn't suffocating. It wasn't filled with unspoken words or resentments. It was comfortable. Maya leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. "This feels like the beginning," she said softly. "A new beginning." Wesley looked over at her, his expression contemplative. "I never thought I'd be here again. Not like this. But I think we're ready to make it work." "We're ready," Maya affirmed, her voice steady. "We'll take it one day at a time. Together." Wesley reached for her hand, his grip gentle but sure. "Together," he repeated. For a long time, neither of them spoke, content in the peace that had settled over them. The world outside would continue to turn. The challenges they faced would remain. But in this moment, they had each other. And that was enough. The weeks that followed were not without their challenges, but they were filled with a quiet determination. Wesley and Maya had decided together that they would face what came next as a family. No more walls, no more hiding. The house that had once felt like a battleground slowly began to feel like a home again. The triplets, their laughter no longer stifled by the tension of the past, flourished under the care and love of both Wesley and Maya. They grew more attached to Maya, who, despite her doubts and insecurities, proved that she had always been their anchor. She was the constant in their lives, the one who had stayed when everyone else had left. One afternoon, Maya and Wesley stood in the garden together, watching the girls chase butterflies and run through the sprinklers, their shrieks of joy filling the air. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the lawn. It was a quiet, peaceful moment, one that neither of them had thought possible just months ago. Wesley turned to Maya, his expression serious but soft. "I know this hasn't been easy for you," he began. for any of us. But you're still here, and that means more to me than I can ever say." Maya looked up at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I'm not going anywhere, Wesley. I promised Monique I'd take care of them, and I'm not breaking that promise." He nodded, his heart heavy with emotion. "You've done more than that. You've brought something back to this house that I thought was gone forever. Hope, joy, love. And I can never thank you enough for that." Maya's smile faltered, her eyes meeting his. "I didn't do it alone, Wesley. We're in this together now. And I know it's not perfect. We've got a lot of healing left to do. But I believe we can do it. If we keep showing up for each other. If we keep trying." Wesley reached out, his hand brushing against hers. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of everything that had happened between them, the betrayal, the misunderstandings, the grief, seemed to dissipate with every passing second. All that was left was the future, and the promise that they would face it as a family. "Together," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Together," she echoed, her grip tightening around his hand. That night, as they sat together in the living room, watching the girls play with their toys, Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle in her chest. The chaos of the past was behind them now, and while the road ahead would undoubtedly have its bumps, she knew they were no longer walking it alone. Wesley's phone rang, the sound interrupting the quiet moment. He glanced at the screen, his face hardening as he saw the name. It was the lawyer. The ongoing battle with the foundation and the estate wasn't over, and there would be more battles to fight. But for now, for this moment, Maya could see that he was choosing to be present. Choosing to be here with her and the girls, instead of retreating into the world that had once consumed him. Wesley stood up, excusing himself, and Maya turned her attention back to the girls. They were laughing, playing, and just being children, free from the weight of the world, unaware of the struggles their father and Maya had faced. As she watched them, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was why she had stayed. This was why she had fought. Not for herself, but for them. For the triplets, who had lost so much and needed the love and stability she could provide. Later that evening, after the girls had been tucked into bed, Wesley joined her on the porch swing again. The night air was cool, the stars twinkling brightly above them. "You were right," Wesley said quietly, his voice soft. "About everything. About the walls. About us being together." Maya turned to face him, her heart swelling with affection. "We've still got a long way to go, Wesley, but we're getting there." He nodded, his hand reaching out to gently touch hers. "I can't do this without you." She smiled, squeezing his hand. "You don't have to. We'll do it together." For the first time in a long time, Wesley truly believed it. The future wasn't uncertain anymore. It was a path they would walk side by side. And so, as the garden bloomed around them, as the house settled into a peaceful rhythm, they stepped into the unknown, together. As the days turned into weeks, Wesley and Maya continued to navigate the delicate balance of family, healing, and the lingering ghosts of their past. The estate, once a symbol of wealth and isolation, had slowly transformed into a place where laughter and lightness could once again breathe. It was no longer just a house filled with memories. It was becoming a home. The girls had flourished under the newfound stability. Their laughter, once stifled by the tension that had haunted the house, now echoed through every room. Maya had become more than just a caretaker. She was their mother figure, the one who dried their tears, cheered them on in their victories, and most importantly, loved them without reservation. Wesley, too, was changing. The man who had once buried himself in business and the pursuit of perfection had started to open up. The anger, the grief, the walls, bit by bit, they had come down. His eyes, once clouded by years of unresolved pain, now held a gentler light. And as he watched Maya with the girls, he saw what he had been blind to for so long. The strength, the love, the unwavering loyalty that Maya had always given, even when he hadn't fully recognized it. One bright afternoon, Wesley stood in the garden with the triplets. They were playing in the flower beds, picking daisies and chasing butterflies. The sun was high, casting long shadows across the lawn, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Wesley allowed himself to relax. There was no meeting to attend, no deadline to meet. There was just this, just the simple, fleeting joy of being present in his family's life. Maya walked up to him, her hands tucked in the pockets of her jeans. She had spent the morning with the girls, helping them pick flowers for the table and teaching them how to plant new seeds in the garden. She smiled at the sight of Wesley, his arms crossed as he watched the girls with a rare sense of peace. He turned to her as she approached, his expression softening when he saw her. "I think I'm finally starting to get it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Maya raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a gentle smile. "Get what?" "That it's not about perfection," he said, his gaze lingering on the girls. "It's about love, about being here, about showing up for them, for you. No more walls, no more pretending." Maya's heart swelled at his words, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You've been showing up for them, Wesley, for all of us, and that's what matters." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time there was no confusion in his eyes, no hesitation, just understanding. "I know," he whispered, "and I'm sorry for taking so long to see it." Before Maya could respond, Grace, her blonde curls wild and tangled from running around, ran up to them, holding out a daisy with a grin. "Mama Maya, look! I picked this for you." Maya crouched down, taking the flower from Grace's tiny hand. "Thank you, sweetie," she said, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. The moment was simple, beautiful, but it was everything. Everything Maya had wanted for them all along. Later that evening, as the girls were tucked into bed, Wesley and Maya sat together in the living room, the quiet comfort of the house surrounding them. There were no grand gestures, no sweeping declarations. There was just them, together in this space they had built, one day at a time. The past, while still present, no longer had the power to control them. The future, with all its uncertainties, no longer seemed so daunting. Wesley turned to Maya, his voice low but steady. "I've been thinking about the future, about what's next for us." Maya met his gaze, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" He hesitated for a moment, his fingers lightly tracing the edge of his glass. "I mean, after everything we've been through, all the pain, the loss, the confusion, we've come through it, together. And I don't want to just move on. I want to build something that lasts, for the girls, for us." Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. She knew where this was going, and the words she had longed to hear were finally here. Wesley stood up, his hand extended to her. "Maya, will you stay? Not just as a caretaker, but as my partner in this. Will you build a future with me? With them? As a family? Her heart soared. She stood slowly, taking his hand in hers. I already am, Wesley. I already am. And with that, they both knew. The road ahead would not be without its challenges, but together they would face whatever came. The house, once a symbol of isolation, had become a place of healing, of love, of second chances. And as they moved forward, side by side, they would build something far greater than any legacy, something that would endure for generations. If you enjoyed this story and the emotional journey of Maya and Wesley, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Stay tuned for more heartfelt tales that will keep you coming back for more. Join our family and don't miss out on the next chapter. Subscribe now and be part of the story.